to our panel discussion, the role of technology in ensuring business continuity for global payroll. I'm sure attendees from around the world in the 120 countries that have been represented in the last 2 days that we would have never ever thought that the business continuity would be center stage today. It was always important in our organization, but today it takes on a new direction as we get into 2020. Today, we will share our insights from our two panelists on business continuity today, tomorrow, and in the future so that we can rise above the situation and support our organizations in the future. Our first panelist is Julie Fernandez. She is a partner at ISG. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, Mary. Thanks for having me, and welcome, everyone. Pretty excited to talk about business continuity and payroll today.
Well, thank you. And our next panelist is Kelly Rosenay. She is the Senior Director for Global Time to Pay and an advisory leader for the Hackett Group. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Great to be here with you today.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm honored to have the two panelists with me. We'll share our experience on business continuity. It's been center stage in the past as an item to pay attention to, but now it is center stage for all organizations, even if they hadn't paid attention. If we get nothing out of 2020, it's the importance of business continuity plan and having a process in place, which in some cases, some of our companies and organizations had to do immediately within 2 days. And then they probably felt like, wow, I did it. I got it done in 2 days, but it's been ongoing for 8+ months. And what does that look like as we get into the end of the year? And of course, 2021, when it rings in, everyone's hoping it will go away. That's my hope, but let's hope that is the crystal ball vision that we have, but we do need to be prepared. So we're going to get into our first question of the day. The first question is, the onset of the pandemic has been the biggest test for organizations' readiness in ensuring continuity of global payroll. What is your reading on the impact of the pandemic on the global payroll? So I will ask Julie first to share her thoughts on that.
Sure. Thanks, Mary. So I'm starting from the mindset that over 70% of companies outsource payroll. And according to ISG surveys earlier this year, the providers actually scored pretty well, like a 3.9 on a 5-point scale in their performance and ability to quickly shift to remote operations, right? Many companies have a hybrid model with retained resources involved in more than just vendor oversight. So, in general, organizations themselves struggled with conversion of their own in-house operations to perform the source to gross, so the error corrections and approvals. But what employees experienced in all of that really reflected the responsiveness of all of the parties in our delivery model coming together. How well did they work out their own kinks, plus the bumps in between?
Okay, I would agree that it is nice to see the high numbers for the providers, right? Because in the global payroll space, we definitely know that we're using providers in HR and global outside our organization. Not much is done in-house. So having those scoring high is very positive of what the direction is. So Kelly, what are some of the things that your thoughts on this?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, some companies were definitely ready and prepared, maybe not for a global pandemic, but were prepared for certain sites to go out. They had their laptops, they had their procedures, they practice it. And others really struggled. They didn't have the right technology or automation. They were still highly paper processed, right? So when you take a look at when you want to go out, work from home for a day, that's one thing. You need to do it for a week, that's another. But to your point, we're now going on 8 months. And so organizations are really struggling. They got home, they worked, people got paid, but is it really efficient? Are they able to keep up with compliance and other issues that are going on within the global environment? And it is very, very difficult. And we're still continuing to see that things that have been weaknesses of payroll organizations for the last 10, 20 years are really coming to the forefront because now they have to be addressed in order to work in this work from home global environment.
No, and I think with both your comments, Julie and Kelly, and with some of the other sessions that we've seen yesterday and will probably be mentioned as we move into other sessions today, I think the common theme is around automation and digitizing the processes and experience for the companies, along with really what technology do we have. And when we look at technology, it's sometimes just the simple thing as what is our internet bandwidth for that particular employee that's working for us, or actually the person that's doing services for us outside our organization that we've actually worked with and put together a program. And that's part of our program, is to use outside services. How do those all fit together with the different bandwidths around the world? And we've seen that. So I think those are kind of the big pieces that everyone has been addressed in this business continuity. And then of course the remote worker, that in some of the business continuity plans in the past, we weren't focusing on having everybody out. We were focusing on how do we bring up the systems as fast as possible. And we had key people identified that would be on call and have their little procedure and process. And that was tested back and forth, or you're switching systems. But we never probably planned to have the impact of what happens with employees. So definitely something that has been challenged. Companies have stepped up to the challenge. And I would say on the surface, as I meet with others, they're doing a great job. And I think everybody needs to recognize that everybody in HR and payroll are essential, and what you've done is fantastic. So let's go on to our next question that does have the aspect again of technology. It says, the question is, what aspects of technology do you think make global payroll resilient? Resilience enough to make the process withstand the onslaught of the pandemic. What are the emerging technology trends in global payroll that, in your view, will make global payroll resilient now and into the future? So Kelly, I'll give you that. I'll have you share your insight first.
Sure. So you talked a little bit about VPN, right? So very difficult to VPN into an organization bandwidth, right? If you have an on-prem system. So definitely looking at on cloud and the number of vendors that you have, right? Looking at your vendor partnerships, ensuring that they have a great business continuity plan, but what other pieces of technology do they have enabled that can help you? We're definitely seeing an increase in automation, RPA, workflows, and those are all things that your vendors can help you enable. Getting rid of the paper, right? How digital can you get off the paper garnishments and other processes that you have? And just really taking a look at that end-to-end process and understanding the handoffs. We're seeing a lot more with global operations and looking at moving things from local to more regional and global. So that way you have backups for all of that. And if you have multiple systems across multiple locations, that is very, very difficult. So we are seeing an increase of people taking a look at their global payroll strategies and saying, okay, in the pandemic, what were some of the things that we really struggled with? Was it analytics? Was it automation? Was it getting the processes done? And how do we partner with our key stakeholders within our own organization, but also our key vendor partners as well?
I think you've made some good points of us looking at what are we doing today? What can we do? And what are our vendor partners doing, and what services do they have now that they're providing, but do they have additional services that can support the organization? And really that snapshot is how well have they done through this period of the last 8 months? Have they been able to support and do that? I have seen some organizations looking to change vendors now, which in this period of time, you would think maybe companies might not look at that expense, but I have been seeing and talking to others that they're looking at improving their technology because they found it wasn't where it should have been. And they need to make sure that they have a technology platform in place to move forward. So definitely something that the company recognized. And I think we'll see others as we get through this. So Julie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, Kelly was spot on with the automation and the reporting aspects. Those came to light very quickly, the needs for those things. I think another aspect of technology that required maybe far more effort than is typical is the need to make changes to your basic pay calculations, to, system configurations and rules, to the codes, and doing that on short notice and even retroactively, as governments in every single one of these countries, really kind of race to try to figure out how do we adapt to the crisis situation, and, what incentives or programs are we putting in place that then companies need to respond to, and ultimately, need to stand up and make happen in payroll. And so the amount of testing and deploying, all while, functioning remotely over the last 8 months, has just been driven to levels that we really haven't seen before outside of, this crisis. And not everyone is good or was prepared for that, right? And it is something that we should be thinking about moving forward, because there's every indication that, every country will continue to kind of shuck and jive as best it can and navigate its way through the crisis. So that was just a new angle, and it's an angle we really have to adapt to.
I love that you brought that up.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I love that you brought that up, because, global compliance was so complex before COVID hit.
That's right. Yeah.
And now you add in all these changes, right? So doing a furlough is different in one country from the next, and there's all these complexities that you have to put into place. And if you don't have a good standardized testing process, a lot of our organizations think, oh, it's just quick. It's a payroll code. You can put that right in. And that's really not the case. As payroll leaders, we know it's so much more complex than that. And it's really important that we take a look at what those processes are and educate our stakeholders, because a decision that's made in the organization can greatly impact how we pay people on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. So that's great.
And I think some of the countries across the world didn't know how to put some of these programs in place. So they're making ever changes on that. So you have it all tested and put together, and then there's another change. Do we include this or not include this? And then we're back to the drawing board to do more testing. And just the amount of information or resources we have is so limited. It's interesting. I belong to this WhatsApp group, and that's mainly based on UK payroll processing, but I can tell you, the minute that there's a new change, you can't imagine how many people are asking questions, posting things out there. So those are all the challenges that we're having, not just one country, let alone, hundreds of countries across the world that are facing this. And of course, everybody wants to get people paid, right? Because we know the impact of what's happening for our employees and our organization. So it's definitely been a challenge. I see Julie mentioned the reporting, and I know reporting is huge, because we're trying to determine, what is the cost of this, these people in this location versus another location. If are people having to work overtime to keep things going, what is that cost? And I think the challenge then comes back to the technology. Do we have the technology to get that reporting done quickly? Because sometimes I talk to HR and payroll professionals, and they have reporting, but it's really a group of people spending a couple of days to get the reporting they need for the month's results. So we need this stuff immediately. So once again, the technology piece plays a big player in our space of supporting our organizations.
And leaders don't just want reports nowadays, right? They want you to model, like what happens if I take this incentive or I don't take that incentive. And so beyond reporting it, like how do I even, give them good answers for making decisions?
Right. And that 2 or 3 days is a huge lost opportunity to react, right? I mean, there's a lot that can happen in an organization in that level of time. I mean, we have a hard enough time putting together headcount or costs, right? And then you get into this predictive modeling. If I do this incentive or I take advantage of that, right? You're talking weeks, right?
Yeah.
So we need to look more at our technology and figure out how we take our analytics more from this, predictive, prescriptive analysis versus just looking at it from a historical run the business type view.
Right. I would agree. And in some cases, the information for reporting is really helping the business make decisions of what they have to do. Do we downsize in this country versus another, or even looking at their business plans that are out for the next couple of years? They might be going out for funding or looking at when they were planning to go live. Does that work or not work? So definitely has played a role today. And of course, remember, we still have that theme. We thought it would be over in a month or 3 weeks at the most when it was first announced here in the US. But now I keep thinking it's not going away. I'm going to be celebrating New Year's with it. So we have to move forward. So let's go on to our third question that really we did touch a little bit on. It's on payroll data. Payroll data is treated as highly confidential across organizations. What steps should organizations take to ensure data security is secure with compliance to local work rules and laws in today's pandemic situation? So Kelly, want to give us your insights to that? Everybody's going to agree data privacy. You could be here for days on that one, but what insight do you have for us?
We could. I mean, number one, partner with vendors who are compliant in the countries in which you do business with. And then countries in which you may future do business with, right? Because you want to be able to grow within the same vendor population. The biggest thing is get away from spreadsheets, emailing of spreadsheets, loading of spreadsheets, right? The more interfaces you can automate, you can control your security through your applications and where this data is being stored, viewed. I mean, those are the biggest things that you need to take care of. How the work is performed. I mean, obviously the people on your team, you trust them, right? They can see the information, they've taken their GDPR training. The biggest thing is making sure that you have those secure interfaces and those secure vendors.
Mm-hmm. Julie, what would you like to share on
Yeah. Yeah, I think, just to add on to that, the more hands that are in the pot, the more risk there is of data breach, right? So when we look at the separation of duties between even like HR and finance roles or local teams and shared services teams between staff and providers, there's automated and manual. And so, all of that comes together and creates a pretty complex, little stew of, of people and things that need to really work together in order to crank out a good, high quality, correct payroll. And, now is a good time for us to look back, see what worked, what hasn't worked well, and strike the right balance by looking at payroll delivery end to end and identifying how many touch points do I have? Am I creating opportunities for, for breach or increasing my risk for data breach because, I just have so much, kind of going on and it's all different from one country to the next.
Right. I think Julie and Kelly, you mentioned on many things, the people are involved in the process, really the people process of that. Once again, reminding them about data privacy, depending on your organizations, how often you have an update on that. Definitely, I would say great best practice is at least to do it annually. In this situation, it doesn't hurt to dust that off and send some information just for awareness, because we are working from home. Who's seeing their computers, right? If we look at people on a kitchen, we're working on a kitchen table or a shared workspace, what information is being shared or displayed, and how we're keeping that information safe. And then of course our vendors are key in that particular piece of the model. And then it really goes back to, the roles and security that we have in place today. What have we set up with technology and that roles, and what do our vendors have to make sure that we are keeping it secure? If we have to change somebody's role to move them to be able to process a payroll in Latin America, can we do that? And how quickly can that change take place? And in some cases, some companies are very good at have done that in the past, where they've tested themselves and done that switch between different regions. Where others, we're just suddenly going to have to do that, and we're going to have to figure it out because the people in that particular location can't come to the office, and what's going to happen with that. Even the piece of our vendors looking at their business continuity, because in some cases, what happens if they can't come to the office or process payroll? We're going to be at risk for our employees not getting paid on time. So let's go on to the next question. What is the local readiness? Is it the same as global readiness when planning for continuity in business global payroll? So managing business payroll, what's the difference between the local and the global readiness? So Kelly, you want to share with us that one?
Sure. So, I mean, you need to have a plan that's local, regional, and global. And I always say best practice is to have one global payroll process owner that's responsible for workforce management and payroll operations. And what you're going to do at a local level is going to be more detailed and specific to your country laws. What you do regionally, obviously is going to have all of those local policies feed up. And then what you do globally is, just your overall strategy, making sure that end to end your business continuity is met. You're taking the time to ensure that you've practiced your business continuity, even though we've all been practicing it for 8 months now, and just making sure that you're meeting regulations at all of those various levels. So there are layers to the plan that you need to consider. It's not going to be a one size fits all. Things are going to be very fluid. They're going to move quite a bit. But you do need someone who's leading the charge. You can't have 50 different plans for 50 different countries. You need someone who's holistically looking at it from the organization to make sure that you're staying compliant, that your operations are there, you're maintaining payrolls. The last thing any of us wants to be is in the news because we didn't process payroll for a week, right? So need to consider what that whole plan looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there, Kelly. I mean, the global process owner is key, but you also have to stay close to local conditions. And if there are some folks who have really tried to move as much as possible to regional shared services model or some such thing. And, I think they felt some of the pains of maybe getting a little bit too disconnected to local conditions or needing to build the bench strength of a cluster team or cluster geography team or regional team to really be able to handle, the volume of compliance and changes that we saw. And the only other thing I'd add is just all of that, needs to be built into your governance, right? So your governance model needs to reflect, exactly how you're trying to balance things from the global process owner to the regional HR and payroll governance activity, and then into the local country role. So, it's at every level. You can't avoid it.
Well, definitely have to, we need an owner, right? So we need an owner that's going to be able to manage. And in this situation, we need that owner to be available because they're going to have to make decisions as things change around the countries that you're operating in. If we look at 150 countries that we might be processing in, it's quite a job as things change. And we even have to look at the country situation, but what's actually happening with our employees in our organization. Do we have anybody getting out sick, our key employees, to identify the risk? Because if they're out, they'll be out for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And that's another huge impact on what's happening today. And along with the fact that some things aren't able to happen because the tax authorities and offices are closed. They've never been structured in a work from home or a virtual cloud situation. So that's a challenge just in itself. I do know a company I was working with was trying to register in Spain and everything was just completely shut down. That employee was not going to be able to do hiring or anything it actually took a couple months to get that actually resolved. So another challenge that we have. So our next question, we're pretty close to the end of our session together, but I wanted to, in closing, really have Kelly and Julie kind of share what one closing advice, and it's probably one or two advices that that you'd give to the audience to ensure that you're prepared. So you might be prepared today, whatever level you are, identifying your risks where you are, but what measures can you take to make sure that you're proofreading your situation, and so you too can rise above this situation and then move your organization forward into 2021 and then into the future? Because even today, people are saying, even if we get a vaccination, that doesn't necessarily mean we might have another virus or something that could come into our future. It's something that it's unknown now, and I think it will live in our organizations, and that we're going to have to identify risk and plans. So Kelly, you want to share your thoughts on that first?
Sure. So it's really about creating that strong global business continuity plan for your entire payroll organization through your global leader, right? And then, of course, definitely making sure that you've got that compliance piece. And it's also building a really strong global compliance monitoring process. And that's through utilizing your vendor partners, your local staff and employees, right? They know what's going on in that individual country. And then executing against that plan on a regular basis, right? We're executing against it now, but don't get so comfortable and think that nothing like this could happen again. I mean, we have other types of risks that aren't a global pandemic, and we need to start modeling and thinking about what those other issues are. Teams are going to get more virtual. So you need to take a look at your technology and make sure that your technology meets some of the outcomes of your business continuity plan.
Very good.
Yeah.
And Julie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so my mindset since Kelly hit the strategic really well is a little bit more tactical, and I just keep thinking that we're nearing year end, and as you've mentioned a few times, there's just no end in sight right now to remote work and to this situation that we're managing. So to me, I wanted to emphasize the building your make a change competency, right? Starting with year end, from what is changing to how to enact system changes, process changes, test and release, communicate, and then down all the way down, right, to service and support. Who needs to be a part of the well-oiled machine that you're trying to build, and just even in the short term here, to get this done, to get through year end, and to be able to move with whatever happens in 2021. Get that down pat, and it'll make you better, more resilient in the year, and maybe even going into the years of the change we have ahead.
Well, I think what I would agree with both Kelly and Julie, what you shared, I think all of the things that we put in place or we're going through today will position us for the future. And those things will help us not with just this situation, it will help us with other situations to make our organization stronger and be more resilient to anything that might happen. We ups and downs, growth in mergers and acquisitions is another area where what we're doing today can be used in other areas and will make us strong and move forward. I think that the theme of that, if I wrap it up real quick, that we've shared today is really the theme around really having a plan and having an owner. Really, we need to have a plan and have an owner. If you don't have it today, that's the first thing you have to start with. And you know what? It might be small steps, but just start with getting something together and identifying your risks. So I think we talked about the risk, making sure your organization knows what risks are out there. And really recognizing that the remote workers and the remote pieces of this is going to move into 2021. And what does that look like for your organization? And that means even your organization, but also the vendor partners you're using. And what does that look like? Just simply, even on the business continuity, you have to look at what's happening with the workers. How are they surviving in the 8 or 9 months? Because we need them to be healthy and safe and be mentally okay with all of that's happening, because there's a lot of change. Change is a big thing that we're all being faced with today. We touched on data privacy, the importance of that. And then we also touched on the importance of the technology, having technology to be able to do the reporting, being able to get the reports, having the automation, the digitization of the system, and the role that technology plays today and will be playing in the future. So all of the things that we're building together in this business continuity will be things that we'll use in our organization. So it shouldn't be seen as just a one-time event. It is an opportunity for us to reach out to our stakeholders, connect better with them, kind of figure out what their needs are, making sure that we're all partnering together. And then, of course, at the highest governance level, as Julie mentioned, and also Kelly mentioned, is we got to have somebody at the top level of our organization seeing there and helping us drive this through the organization, because it can't be done with one person. So definitely have to pull that all together. So I want to thank Kelly and Julie for sharing your insights today. It's been a great discussion. I challenge you all to go back, and so you can rise above 2020 and move into 2021, is to take a look at what you're doing today. Use some of our insights to help improve your plans, because no plan is always perfect. It's always room for improvement in anything we do. So take a look at that. And Kelly and I will be in the speakers lounge after this session. So welcome you to reach out to us. And I know, even though Julie, it has another session after this, you can reach any of us out on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to connect with you. So thank you, Neeyamo, for having us today present this panel on business continuity, so that we can help everyone that's listening rise above 2020.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.